People ask me questions, and it turns out that there's a lot of frustration between the Thai Theravada tradition and
Right.
Western busyness. Again, we're looking at quite dynamic people that come here. They're just not sleepy folks.
I see.
They're not sit back and kind of let's wait for the answer for a few years.
Do you
They,
mean by the passive monk or something
they're,
like
they're
that?
definitely not passive.
Uh-huh.
And they actually have some fairly unrealistic
I
expectations
see.
about what to expect here.
Mm.
That what the Asian would be comfortable about spending 10 years to learn,
Hmm.
the Westerners would really prefer to learn that in 6 months or a year.
I see.
And they would expect that.
Uh-huh.
And it's a different value system.
I see.
I think that Westerns would say, "Or give me lots of information, and then I'll go think about it."
We can, meet each other halfway.
Well, halfway is really a long way from both people.
Oh, really?
Halfway is not this far from one another. Halfway is still really very far away.
I see.
It would be nice to think that halfway is recognizable or even appreciated by both sides, but actually halfway is still over the horizon
I see.
from both cultural points of view. And so it looks like a very long way.
Maybe we can say midway way better.
Well, I think that there is, I don't want to say there needs to be an appreciation
Uh-huh.
between both halves of cultures. I think there needs to be a recognition
I see.
that there is
Recognition.
truly
Yeah.
a difference that is going to take a period of time to appreciate.
That's why one thing I want to learn English, as the monk in Theravada tradition. Actually, in the 40 or 50 year, monks were not allowed to study foreign language and typing, a computer, no, not computer, is a typing
Typewriter.
machine, right?
Yes.
At that time, that's some of monks, they escape, they dot around, to from the monastery to learn by themselves. And then they study very well, and then they well learned about a good command of English. They can compose English book by themselves. They can convey some Dhamma, to, I think it's at that time very tough for them, but they can, get through that's, custom of a tradition. Until now, they're more open, and then we can learn, understand each other. That's one of my, reason I selected to study English or Western language. I want to learn not only language. I want to learn the thinking behind that. Maybe culture, as you mentioned, we have the big gap. Between Eastern and Western culture, and how we can, meet each other, and we can, accept, as you mentioned, recognition. I think it's very important for this idea to understand each other. But without learning, without education, recognition. For example, Thai monk, if they never go abroad, they never, stay in Western environment, how they appreciate, that culture is quite difficult. But even they speak, oh, I'm quite open mind or something like that, but deep inside I believe it's not like that. I think it's take time through education, especially I hope the young monks, the young Buddhists, they are encouraged, to learn more about this, as you mentioned, both culture or even language or even the Dharma. Actually, Dharma we practice. That's why in our, Buddhist Sangha use, objectives, we have 4 language. One, we study our own language. We call local language. For example, like Thai, or when some monks, they have their own dialects, something like that. That's we call local language. Another one we call the Western or foreign language, whether it be Chinese, Japanese, or even the Spanish, French, German, or even English. As we must study, we must learn that. Another thing we call the technology language. That's how to produce. TV program like this. How to, use the new technology as a tool for Dhamma. Dissemination, or even the last language we cannot miss that. That's we call the Dhamma language. It's a kind of not only Pali or Sanskrit or Tibetan or Chinese, the ancient or classical Chinese, but it means a kind of the deep inside language people can understand through your own example, not just only your presentation, but it means through your conducts, your activity. That means we can send this message, the message of peace to the people, through the silent appearance, through the robe, through the monks, monk appearance, something like that. I think it's this we want to learn more about this as well. Yep.
Well, there are two conditions here as far as translating information. In the early 1970s, it was easy to read all the books written on Dharma in 6 months. There was maybe 20 books that were specifically Dharma books. It turns out that the translations of those Dharma books were not very good. It took another 30 years for the Tibetans and Vietnamese and even some Japanese to, one, learn the Dharma and then learn the Western language enough to translate that Dharma. When I talk to Western people, I say, don't read a book that is older than printed in the 1990s. It was printed before that. It's probably not as good a translation of the actual information. Now, it might have been a literal translation before that, but mostly incomprehensible and misunderstood. So it took them 30 years to actually learn how to explain the Dharma in an entirely different language. The Thai people are way behind in this regard. Another aspect here, and I've been able to live with the ordinary Thai people for almost 2 years now.
Oh, really?
Eat the food, live with them, have trouble with the language, have trouble with misunderstanding. They just kind of live in their hugouses and in their small temples or centers. And that's really a hugely valuable insight into different cultural values. And so you need to look at the fact that the Thai monks don't do that. And they don't really have an opportunity to see really how hard Western people do work. They work really hard compared to Tibetans. The Thais, they just work all the time. And they're very well educated in the West. They really do emphasize education, and the Tibetan education is really significantly better than even Western. They keep the kids in school for 12 hours a day from the time they're 7 years old, and they keep them busy for that whole 12 hours. And they really work them very hard, and by the time they get out of high school, I think their intellectual competency is really developed as much as possible, and it gives them a huge advantage over less disciplined people. Thais are behind.